Okay, let's get started. Welcome to today's stream. We're going to be looking at the new Logic 10.7.8. Finally, a video this week, excuse me, where we don't talk about iPad or Logic Pro for iPad, right? You probably have seen a few of those videos around. And it's like half the people are saying how great and how cool. And then a few of us are saying, you know what? I don't know if I get it all the way. Partially because, sure, they brought it to the iPad, but man. Anyway, we're not talking about it. That was what I just said. So 10.7.8 came out the same day as that version. And there are a couple of really cool things on this. It's not just a bug update, but that is a big part of what this update is. And, well, there's a few questions I have, and I'm hoping from those of you who are watching that you can, if you're in front of your Logic, you can open it up and help me out for a second, because there's some question marks I have about this update and the release notes, at least. And one of the features that I was so pumped for, but can't find it. So I don't know if that means they just forgot to put it in or what. So we'll talk about that in a second. There's some things that refinements we're going to be getting in terms of how 32-bit audio files work, which is always a great thing. But there's just a long list. And so we're going to try to go through and talk about as many of the primary features that we can. We'll have a discussion in the chat. If you're here and want to ask questions or whatnot, then we can do that. And we'll go from there. So that's our plan. Let's start by talking about what are called new features and enhancements. These are the things that we look forward to every time there's an update to see what is new. And so let's start there. First and foremost, adds the round trip capabilities for Logic Pro with iPad. And there have been a couple weird things about this that have come through that I haven't fully understood, but we're going to look at that in just a moment. Because a few things have come under the hood that aren't in this list. Let me actually see if I can find it. I was on one of our school computers today, and that's where I primarily saw some of the stuff that made me really scratch my head. And let's see if they're on here. Yeah, so the Logic Pro Virtual In. And I need to look this up. I haven't found anything yet about this. This is something that's newer in Logic. It shows up on the iPad version and in the Logic 10.7.8. If there's anybody watching who hasn't yet updated to Logic 10.7.8, raise your hand. If you have not updated to Logic 10.7.8, I want to do some conversion discussion. I want you to look at what you've got and see if it matches what we have in this new version. So again, if you're one of the ones who have not gone to 10.7.8, I'd love to have you give us some feedback. But this is an interesting, quirky thing. There's also this thing that's showing up that has a question mark in the MIDI inputs. And we're going to have to find out what that means too, because it's just not, it wasn't there before, and all of a sudden it's there now. But let's talk about the next real feature here. This is software instrument tracks now offer an input monitoring button. Normally that's a little eye shape to allow instruments to be played independently of track selection. Okay, this is the fun part, right? So if you look at my instrument tracks and my audio tracks, the audio one has the eye and the instrument ones don't. And so I was super pumped to be able to have a little I button on my instrument tracks, as it says in the release notes, so that I could just click one of those and play my MIDI without having to go into record mode or without having to engage any other feature. And so here we are, and it's not there. So right off the bat, number 2 of the release notes, as far as I can tell, is one of those bugs that we're going to be getting fixed in 10.7.9, if you know what I mean. It's like, okay, thanks a lot. I can't find it. There's no preferences to turn these on. There's nothing in the like the right click menu, control click menu to turn those on or off. They're not there as far as I can tell. Anybody else, if you've seen them in yours, let me know. That'd be great. But for the time being, it looks like we're just getting partial feature releases. That makes me super nervous. Like the development team was just trying to rush to get all this done and running with their heads chopped off. What else did they screw up in that moment? I'm a pessimist this week, so that's okay. This one, clicking anywhere on a selection of regions that includes loops with the glue tool now creates a new region replacing the selection. This is actually a feature that I like quite a bit. So for instance, let's just pull out, some sort of thing here. Let's see, that's fine, we'll do that. And then, we'll have, say, some sort of other one here. And this one here, maybe it has some loops in it. Well, in the past, when you use the glue tool, it doesn't always do things. And by the way, the name of the glue tool has changed. It's no longer the glue tool, it's the join tool. So if we have all those with this and we use the join tool, it's actually going to work as we would hope it had worked. Boom. So, Bad Boy, since you haven't updated yours, can you look and see if that MIDI input is on your system? So again, to get there, you go to Settings, MIDI, Inputs, and then there's one called Logic Pro Virtual In. I'm curious to see if that's there. And in fact, let me look in my OS operating system stuff here. What does it mean? Logic Pro Virtual In. Is that something to do with iPad compatibility? It's not showing up in our audio MIDI studio setup, which all MIDI things should be. And let's check it here real quick on this track. MIDI port, Logic Pro. Oh, that's not the typing keyboard. That's internal and remote. So internal and remote would be for those. Logic Pro Virtual In. Okay, so this is something that's new, and we're going to have to sort out what it means. Logic Pro Virtual In. I don't think... Let me do a quick search in the manual, although I thought I looked there. Logic Pro Virtual In. Logic Pro Virtual In. Virtual MIDI devices. So I didn't even think to look in the manual before now. That's good. Logic Pro for Mac includes two virtual MIDI devices called Logic Pro Virtual In and Logic Pro Virtual Out. You can use Logic Pro Virtual In to receive MIDI messages from another music app, and Logic uses Virtual Out to send. Okay, so real quick, because now we have to test this. Let's do FL Studio. That's updated. I'm going to move the manual over for a second. Options, MIDI settings. There's the Virtual Out. So I can send MIDI between two apps now based on the Logic Pro Virtual. Okay. I've got so many questions. We had the IAC driver, right? IAC is still here showing up right there. Now we have this new Virtual Pro, Logic Pro Virtual In and Out. So we can connect MIDI between different devices. I have so many questions. Why on earth is this not in the release notes, right? mind blown a little bit. Yeah, but it's like, I wonder if we're on the same network if that shows up. The problem with making this here is it's demonstrating some of the weaknesses of the core audio system. Core audio system handles things like IAC driver and some other things. If we don't have a core audio system on an iPad and we're using it to talk to other apps on the iPad format, then maybe they had to bring it into the Mac format so that they could have compatibility issues or just compatibility in general. Okay, cool, I guess. But another pipeline for running MIDI back and forth. So we're down. We're down with more things. It's not in the release notes as far as I can tell, which is interesting. So the new glue tool, and it says glue tool, and even the tool is not called the glue tool anymore. They changed it to the join tool. They just didn't update it in the release notes. These are perhaps some of the most messy release notes in the first 3 sentences that I've ever seen. Usually they get the first 3 sentences right, not in this case. There are some new key commands to adjust region gain. Awesome. I don't use key commands to do region gain, but maybe somebody would like to do that. We have pressing the control key while moving downbeat or beat hints in the smart tempo editor. Now disable snap, which I will use. Not very often, but every once in a while. This one is pretty important. Pressing the control key while launching Logic Pro now adds an option to launch the core audio driver with audio unit plugins disabled on launch. If you're having some issues with plugins, this is a way to turn them all off so you could load it up without having to go just into like Rosetta mode or something. It's a great feature. I confirmed that one's actually there. I'm not just going to do it right now, but I know that it's working. And then key commands to nudge events now work when the step input keyboard has focus. What a strange list of new features and enhancements. I love it. Here's where we go into the bread and butter of this list for a few minutes. Stability and reliability. Fixed an issue where dragging audio file to the tracks area while Apple loops are being indexed could cause Logic to hang. It just is like, could unexpectedly quit, could unexpectedly quit, could unexpectedly quit, could unexpectedly quit, etc. all the way down to there. So I don't know if you've had these happen. I've had Logic Pro unexpectedly quit a few times recently, and I'm hoping that these will change some of that and it'll be more reliable. I think that's a great option and very useful to get rid of some of those bugs. More exciting than Logic Pro on the iPad, which granted I'm excited about, but I'm also excited for the software I use on a day-to-day basis. There's a few more things here. In terms of performance, I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but some of these are just super nice. If you have a silicon-based Mac, for instance, improves the display of progress, loading audio unit plugins when opening a project on a silicon-based Mac. We all know that we've had some issues with that. Awesome. But things like dragging notes in the piano roll is now fluid when limit dragging to one direction is enabled. Okay, cool. And so forth. So we're not going to read through all of these, but there's a number of just like performance enhancements. So things that temporarily freeze for just a moment, be smoother. We've all run into things like that. Includes performance enhancements when working with a large number of regions, performance with projects containing long drummer regions, performance when bouncing projects on Mac computers with silicon, and so forth. So it keeps on going down. Nothing too crazy there. Things like memory usage being increased when you're using the multimeter. Awesome. Again, not something I've noticed, but I appreciate them working on it. Maybe somebody had. Okay, accessibility. This is a hugely important part of Logic. Logic Pro is not very accessible. It has its areas that are accessible and areas that aren't. And so we've added 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 or so voiceover features, everything from contextual menus to when you adjust the drummer region, you lose voiceover focus. I mean, it's just things that you don't even think about until you need this. I think this is really important. Smart tempo. So we have some smart tempo things, selecting and deselecting sections at the smart tempo editor by clicking on the middle area of the display now works consistently. I want to thank the engineers for making this feature work consistently. Let's see what else. A lot of like just small things, but things nonetheless. Time signature hints placed immediately after a locked range now take effect. Okay. Trying to see if there's any of these with a smart tempo that I've used that had issues for me. I don't think so. Okay, cool. Mixer. There's a couple in here that I read through and I thought, you know what, maybe this is a big deal. Let's see. Let's start with the beginning one though. The select auxiliary channel strips command no longer selects summing stacks as well. I had that happen at least once. Loading audio channel patches now reliably preserves the current assigned input setting. I haven't seen that one. Record enable button on focus tracks now toggle between record mode and mix mode when clicked. Mixed mode. Okay, cool. So I'm guessing it's just non-record mode. Is the mixed mode they're talking about? I don't know. Record enable. I'm going to take a peek real quick. Looks like before. I guess I don't know exactly what is different there. Okay, cool. Now possible to enable and disable input monitoring in grouped tracks. Seems useful. Performing undo after recoding multiple passes of MIDI with the overlapping. Recording? I mean, come on. I guess recoding's a word so spell check wouldn't catch it, but read your dang list. This is the most buggy list that Apple's ever released, and that's saying something, right? It can't be recoding. It has to be recording. Anyway, recording set to create tracks in cycle mode no longer causes the software instrument channel strip to be changed to an audio channel strip. Yes. I hate that bug. I hated that bug forever. I don't know how long it was there, but it happened. Key commands are to paste channel strip settings now works on multiple selected channel strips. That's useful. Channel strip added to a multi-output software instrument now output to the same bus. Okay, cool. Track delay now works with tracks assigned to aux channel strips. Thank you. It's like the timing stuff with aux tracks. I'm still not positive if the automatic track delay compensation is working all the way with all of the different types, but this is probably tuned into that for something. The accuracy of the gain meters on channel strips is improved. Thank you, because it has been actually not as accurate as I wish it was of late. And then aux channel strips that route within a track stack but are not assigned to the tracks now reliably display as part of the track in the mixer, no matter where in the track list the track stack lies. That's a confusing sentence. Just ignore that. We're still stuck with our mixer determining our track order, or the other way around. It's infuriating that we don't have ability to move tracks. And then groups, one thing for the groups, just using groove tracks no longer sets all of the groups tracks to the same groove track. Okay, cool. Let's see, I don't remember too much with track stacks, although I know that there's certainly, if you're using track stacks, some of these might be useful for you. I'm trying to refresh real quick. Yeah, I mean, it's just some enhanced features and fixes. Let's move down. Track stacks. Okay, flex time and pitch. No mention of fixing the bug that they fixed with the last update, which is still broken, but I haven't tested it out yet. I'm assuming maybe that they just fixed it and didn't want to mention that they still hadn't fixed it. But flex time on a track now remains enabled when switching presets. Okay. Take regions now display flex pitch notes. Take regions. Okay. In the cases where the flex editing or analysis for the audio was performed in the project, so it's just tying those better together. Here's a couple of the 32-bit things. This might be all of them, but anything we get with 32-bit audio files is better because it still has some weaknesses. But time stretch now works with 32-bit audio files. This is a deal if you use those. I've avoided using 32-bit audio files in Logic for many reasons. Something about dragged flex markers, and then time stretching 32-bit audio regions no longer leads to an unexpected increase in level. So it wasn't working, and then it also was doing a new level when it was working. That's confusing too. Okay, cool. Some plugins. There's a few things in here that I've noticed that I appreciate. The channel EQ analyzer no longer continues to display when playback stops. Does anybody notice that one? That happens all the time. In theory now, for instance, let's see. Now let's put the EQ on here. Analyzer starts on. I love it. I love that it goes away. Cool. I think that's what they're talking about. I have noticed it sometimes sticking. The tape delay plugin no longer produces unexpected audio clicks when Flutter is used without smoothing. Haven't noticed that one, but it sounds right. Software instrument tracks renamed by loading an AU preset file into an audio unit instrument no longer show that appended to the track name. Awesome. ES2 and RetroSynth no longer produce unexpected aliasing artifacts between voices when playing chords on certain patches on Mac computers with Apple Silicon. I'm glad they're still working on the ES2. I mean, geez. Go Apple. Resolves an issue where in certain cases an instance of Ultrabeat would not output sound after Logic Pro's quit and relaunched. Anybody still using Ultrabeat? I have stopped almost 100% because between the drum machine designer, the drum kit designer, the drummer track, the drum synths, it's like we have so many really cool stuff. And the step sequencer, I'm not using the Ultrabeat anymore. It's still cool, but I don't use it anymore. And the interface is still ugly. Bypassed external instrument plugins no longer unexpectedly transmit MIDI. I'd like to say thank you to the Academy for that. The EQ curve now adjusts more smoothly when raising or lowering the gain on a peak band in the channel or linear phase EQ. Adjusts more smoothly when raising. I love it. So that's just going to increase the overall performance of when you're moving things around. The MIDI transposer plugin now reliably retains settings when a saved project is reopened. I mean, reading through this list makes you wonder how anyone gets anything done using all of these tools, right? Does anyone else feel that way when you're reading through this list and you're like, holy mother. Anyway, it's just like, what in the world? It is now possible to drag audio files from browsers in Logic Pro to audio units running natively on Apple Silicon. Awesome. And the down mixer plugin now defaults to stereo. Always wondered why I didn't. That's cool. The sustain portion, this is in the sampler and quick sampler, the sustain portion of notes within zone and sampler. The sustain portion of notes within zone and sampler. Is that... That's like perfect English. Now play properly in flex mode. And then SD2 files used in sampler no longer to store. Woo! SD2. I've got a file drive, a bunch of SD2 files, but I don't use those either. Dr. Voodoo, I'm not arguing about it being powerful. I just really like the other tools that have come down. But Ultrabeat was one of my favorites for years. Tempo gain knocked off in some. I have not seen that one personally, and it's not listed in here. And then Hakeem says they love Ultrabeat. I mean, it was so good when it came out. So Dr. Voodoo, the SD2 file is it's the file format that Pro Tools used before they did Wave and AIF. It was a Sound Designer 2, which is the original Pro Tools software. And so a lot of old engineers like me have a bunch of files that are in SD2 format still, yes. One fix on Alchemy for the first time. That's like one of the smallest amounts we've ever had with Alchemy. Hopefully that means it's working well. A number of automation fixes. I'm trying to see anything that I want to talk about. I mean, there's some stuff, but nothing that it's like I'm losing interest in reading all these like complex sentences that could be rewritten in a simpler way. That's how I feel. Oof. Some good, I mean, I'm glad they're fixing and working on it. Live loops. You can corrupt the cells by crossing the end in the beginning position. It sounds like if you're crossing the streams in Ghostbusters. MIDI notes near the edge of a cycle zone now reliably have the correct lengths. Awesome. Record enabled software. Tracks now automatically. Blah, blah, blah. Step sequencer. Extending the left border of a pattern region no longer causes the background pattern to appear misaligned. Oh, thank goodness. I did this one like a couple weeks ago. I moved the left side of a step sequencer region, of a pattern region, and it just like crapped it all out. I was so pissed. Drummer and drum machine designer notes played back on a drum machine designer subtrack now always light the pad for that subtrack. I hadn't noticed that, but cool. Chase now works correctly for CC11 messages and regions with clip length enabled. Okay. I hadn't messed up or had any of those kind of messing up, but Apple Loops, this one, I don't use Apple Loops all that much, but every once in a while, the transient markers in Apple Loops on groove tracks are now used to calculate audio quantization. I mean, why not if they're already there? Why not? Why not? Key commands. The key commands to bypass all plugins on selected channel strip now works in cases where some channel strips in the selection do not contain plugins. So if there weren't any there, it wasn't doing it if the selection was made. Awesome. The increase, decrease, last clicked parameter key command now works properly. And the nudge up and down. Okay, cool. Look at all, I mean, this is a lot of stuff. I mean, this is tons of stuff. Editing. Fixes an issue where repeat once key. Okay, cool. Piano roll, MIDI environment. Ooh, this is interesting. This is something that I like to see. I really like to see when in the notes it says the MIDI environment transformer object no longer limits values to a maximum of 128. That's a MIDI number, obviously. There's 128 steps in MIDI. And I wonder if this is partially for MIDI 2.0 integration, a better integration with it. I don't know exactly, but some of the values we can do more than 128 steps, and so we should be. But more importantly, Apple just said, ooh, I guess we're going to work on the environment a little bit still. I mean, yay, I guess. It's nice to know that they're not just like trying to get rid of it completely. Crescendo in the MIDI transform window now behaves as expected. Deleting a selected event in the event list no longer clears the selection. This is a sentence that none of you, or I shouldn't say none, many of you will have no idea what it means. Transform operations on data byte 2 value now work for fader and fader MIDI events in the transform editor. Ooh. I mean, I've used that. That's when you're doing some sort of data transform. Data byte 1 being the overall identifier for it, and data byte 2 the actual value of that. And you want to do a transform operation on it. But it says now work for fader and fader MIDI events. So maybe it was working for some of the other things, but not for those two specifically. Cool. So if you're doing like some sort of, say I'm creating a fader inside the environment that's going to control sysx data on maybe a DX7, and I want to have it magnified. So every time I move the fader up one value, I want it to go like times 2 and do like a non-linear expansion of that data. It sounds like I can maybe do that easier. You're welcome, everybody. Welcome into the mind of Sam McGuire. Okay, cables in the environment now remain visible when adjusting a fader on a macro. I didn't know they were disappearing. Cool. The share size for an alias object in the environment now immediately takes effect when enabled in the inspector. Cool. What the heck? They're doing a lot with this. I'm proud. I'm proud of Apple for not just giving up on it. Let's see. Fixes an issue where the change gain function on the audio file editor could sometimes apply. That recently happened to me. I don't know the exact parameters. I just undid it, redid it, or maybe it did it a different way and it worked the second time. Let's see. The audio track editor now updates correctly when selecting between regions and flex enabled and those without flex. Cool. Awesome. Some other just minor stuff. An open score window now runs in sync with the playhead in the tracks area. Awesome. I do that a lot, and it's always just a little bit off, and I just always ignore it. So maybe now it'll be a little bit closer together. Okay, cool. And then actually, even though we just did a bunch of environment stuff, we have 2 more environment options. Software instrument channel strips now display custom patch names from multi-instrument environment objects that they are cabled to. Nobody's doing that still, really? I mean, is anybody using that like that? Somebody has to be if they're updating it. But geez. Oof, this is like, next time you're at a party, you should like bring all this stuff up. Alignment between multiple selected objects in the environment is now maintained when they are dragged to a new position. Okay, cool. Export, another 32-bit option, actually a couple of them. WAV and CAF files are exported as 32. When exported as 32-bit files, are no longer converted to AIF. Resolves an issue where exported, essentially the Atmos files could be sometimes, or they could sometimes render as 32-bit, and that sounds like it's a disaster. And then the ADM BWF files exported from the project that contain a mono channel with a stereo plugin now open reliably. Okay, great. Import. Something works as expected. Something is named as expected. Something works with SMPTE as expected. And audio files are no longer hiding from you. Oof, okay, cool. Global tracks resolves an issue where pressing cancel after creating a new signature in the inspector could leave the new signature in place. And markers now consistently display. Oh my gosh, that's Didn't know that was happening. Anyway, cool. Track freezing when performing edits in a take folder on another unfrozen track. Logic Pro no longer shows the unexpected. Do you want to unfreeze it? So if they're just in the same take folder, but one of them's frozen and one of them's not. Okay, cool. Oof. Region settings in the inspector no longer incorrectly appear to be available for regions on frozen tracks. Okay, cool. Takes and comping region delay settings made to comps are now retained when they're flattened or unpacked. Something about articulations. I wish more people would use articulations for anything, but it's a feature that never took off and will likely be dropped at some point, is my guess. Some things in Drum Machine Designer get labeled untitled. Some undo features. Just know that it's a little bit better. When recording multiple passes in cycle mode, the setting create tracks and mute no longer leaves the last cycle pass muted. Cool. Oof. Nothing too exciting here. Oh, that's nice. That's super nice. Clicking on a drummer track no longer disarms recording on other tracks. This is actually a really big deal, partially because when you have in Logic all the tracks and one of the main functions is clicking on them and it changes the record over. But something like the drummer track doesn't have a record functionality. Why would you want to turn off the last one you were on by clicking on it? You just want to go into the regions to edit them usually. And then a couple other little tweaks there. Smart controls. These are still a thing, aren't they? Anybody use smart controls? Let me know. I mean, I get the idea. It's like the new tiles in the iPad version, but I do not use them. They're dumb, except for a few features when you can do external control surface control, customization, a number of different things for control surfaces. If you use those and you've had issues, just check them out. The save as default in the project MIDI sync window works as expected. And then a number of things under the general category, which we're going to go through, but this one is like the longest section, probably. And I found a few like little gems in here, if I remember correctly, when I read this yesterday. But option clicking a disclosure triangle in the project audio window now opens and closes all disclosure triangles as expected. Boom! Option clicking things should do multiple things at once for the same category, so that's great. And Gigadeath, no. As far as we know, we found some things that weren't talked about. So we're going to have to look and see if it works or not, but there's no mention of it so far. Okay, let's see. And thanks for the super chat. The select unused command for tracks now accounts for live loop cells as well as regions. I'm not using live loops on any regular basis, so that's nice. Let's see. I'm gonna briefly browse and see. A bunch of stuff. I mean, some of these could go in different categories, but oh my gosh. This could be what they were talking about earlier. Maybe this is what it is. The behavior when of the oh my gosh. I'm sorry. I know that maybe that doesn't bother other people, but the behavior when of the record. What does that mean? That's like not an actual sentence. Have somebody proofread this once. Maybe they think nobody reads it, but they're wrong. Look at us. There's like 35 of you here in the room, all getting a masterclass in the release notes. The behavior when of the record button on a Focus software instrument track is now consistent with audio tracks when Logic Pro is put into record in cases where record is not manually enabled on any tracks. For both, Focus tracks no longer go into record if the other tracks have been manually armed. This is the biggest update that we've had in Logic in 10 years. I'm not even joking. I'm not joking. Having this means that I'm no longer going to accidentally record into one of my instrument tracks because I clicked on it at one point. I literally record stuff into tracks all the times because I just was clicking on one of them and I left it there. I never record or armed that track. And it just like automatically did it for me. Now, hopefully this is going to work. I mean, we're going to test this out right this second, right? Let's see. I've got instrument track here, which I don't have any MIDI. Where'd my MIDI go? What the heck just happened with my tempo? No, it's all normal. Where? Man, we've had some serious MIDI issues. There we go. With Logic. It's been acting a little bit strange. Okay, so we go here, and let's put an instrument here. Alchemy, right? And let's see which of those records. Right, so that was normal. But it's just selecting on it. So I click the record here. No matter what I do, if I click on the other ones, let me check. I did change one setting a few minutes ago. Let me just make sure I didn't change that. Recording. Where's that one? Oh, it's right there. I left it on. Okay. Input monitoring only for a focus track and only when input monitoring is enabled. As in GarageBand. I don't even... but it's doing this thing where I clicked on the record, and now nothing else gets automatically recorded. Oof, mind blown. That's going to take me a minute to get used to, but this right here should have been number one. I don't even know why it's not there. This is not a fix. This is a new feature. Maybe that's what they were talking about with the new feature above. They just didn't say it this way. I gotta tell you, these are the most confusing release notes I've had in a long time. Undoing changes. Let's see what else we have here. Playhead, play from window edge. Cool. Floating performance, window. Oh, I've noticed this. There's been a few of these things. So say we're like right here in this performance meter. It used to just fly up on top, right? Maybe that's not what they're talking about. Let me see. I don't know. Oh, I see what they're talking about. They're talking about it not going above my other apps. Yes! So that way we don't have that thing floating over your web browser if you put it on top. Plugin windows no longer obscure dialog boxes that require user interaction. Dear God, thank you. Seriously, it's like sometimes there's a dialogue you don't even know is there because a plugin or something is in front of it. Again, not a bug fix. That should be like number 5 on the list at the very top. Snap to bar, cool. If track is manually record enable, selecting another track will no longer automatically record enable it. That's the same thing they just said above. This is maybe the 3rd time that this has been in the document. Oh, Apple needs to pay me to read these notes before they release them. Do you want to add a signature change? Okay, blah, 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 blah. Saved. This sometimes happens, but not recently, I don't think. With the core audio driver changing your sample rate. Oof, let's see. I'm just skimming into see if we have any other really good ones. Okay, cool. These all seem like smaller things. What does that mean? It is again possible to create multi-timbral software instrument when creating empty channel strips from the new tracks sheet. Okay, cool. And that may be when you do a new project, the new project sheet. I saw that you can actually do multi-timbrels and empty tracks. I don't know why I would ever need to do that, but cool. Dragging. A bunch of small things here. The gain tool now works only on active comp regions and take folders. Cool. I'm not sure why. So you can use the gain tool on MIDI regions. Was that the case before, like last week? I don't remember being able to do the gain tool on MIDI regions. That's cool. If it is, now it just at least shows you visually. Flex markers, instrument without MIDI through function, pattern regions dragged. Delay on external MIDI tracks now works correctly. By the way, if you have an external MIDI track, you can't use that project on an iPad Logic Pro. Oof, that's it. Seriously. The biggest things of this whole week are how you don't change where your record button is unless you don't have one manually selected. So there's 2 record options. One is this one here. That's the gray with the red R. It's a lighter gray than the other ones. The minute you click on that, it sticks and nothing else can be taken away from it. Boom. I mean, you want to just leave it, you do it that way. You want to lock it in, you click on it. Yeah. I mean, that's the stupid thing I've been waiting for years. That's all I got to say. Bad boy, are you still here? So I asked this with Gigadeath the other day. I'm asking everybody again because I still can't believe something. I want whoever is not on this version of Logic, not on 10.7.8, to go to the pitch correction plugin and expand the bottom and see if the neural pitch detection is in your version. Can everybody go take a peek and tell me who sees it and who doesn't and what version of Logic you're on? And then we're going to wrap this up because I got to go to a concert. So Bad Boy, it is there for you or it's not there for you? Okay, so it will be there for you, Benjamin, since birth. Be jamming since birth. Can anybody look and see if they're not on 10.7.8, if it is there for me? There's no little drop down thing for you right there? All right, do you have all your advanced tools turned on, Q? Okay, and you're on 10.7.7. They literally just add neural pitch detection with machine learning, if this is what I understand. And they didn't even talk about it. Like, who does this? Who, like, releases something? I was messing around with the pitch detection today. The new neural pitch engine inside this plugin sounds freaking amazing. I was blown away how good it sounded. But I can't compare it because I don't have the old version. You know, they don't give you both. Well, I guess they do because you can turn it off and just run without it. I'm going to have to do some tests to see just how it sounds. But dang, what the world is happening? The world is ending here. I'm just kidding. It's another day at Apple. Thanks everybody for watching. Hope this was useful to talk through some of these things and get some context for some of them. I love how many of you are, throwing stuff in the chat, the comments, and sharing your own stuff because it takes an army of us to, sometimes figure this stuff out. But that's it. We're going to end. It's almost 5 o'clock here in Denver. And I'm going to not think about Logic for the next couple hours. Bye, everybody. Concert I'm going to is my 16-year-old daughter's piano recital. So something super epic for myself. And then LA Winter is asking, what is neural pitch detection? It's the definition in the manual is talking about machine learning. So we're gonna have to figure that out. I love every time that they say they don't want to explain what it means. They just say machine learning. But bye everybody.